Hello again, everyone. So today we're going to go over part 2, would you say? Subset 2 of chapter 10, so 10.2. So section 2 is going to be talking about multiplying polynomials. And then the more in-depth part that I really want you to think about will be in the next video, and that's going to really be about the FOIL method. And that's very specific, a certain kind of polynomial and a certain way of doing it, right? But this part should be mainly review. This is part 1. We're just going to really talk about the distributive property, as you can see. That's something we already know about, right? Um, so going over it again, use the distributive property to multiply numbers with, well, maybe you'll think about it for a sec here while I'm pausing. What do you think you multiply numbers with? Well, you multiply with other numbers normally, right? So you can get a product. And then letters, well, you're going to combine letters with letters when you multiply. All right? And remember to multiply variables with the same base. So if they have the same base, what do you do with the exponents? Remember the exponents. Don't forget them. Right? Because with letters, x times x is not 2x, right? It's x squared. So you don't want to forget that. And that's why it's going to be important to remember those degrees, kind of like in 10.1 we were talking about that. So I'll try and reflect back on that language too here. So the best way to really think about this is to go over examples so we can kind of remember what this looks like. It's been a while. So first example, you have an expression here, 3x minus 8 in parentheses, and you're multiplying it by the term negative 6x, right? And so when we do that in the past, you distribute it, which would just be saying, okay, this outside part is going to multiply to each part on the inside. So what would that look like? Well, you'd use the distributive property, and you could write it like this. Negative 6, 8 multiplied by the 3x that was inside, plus the negative 6x again, times, this time, what do we have? That minus sign you can carry over with the 8, so it's negative 8, right? Because plus negative 8 is the same thing as minus 8. And so that's what the distributive property is saying. These lines will give you the same thing that we're seeing right here, right? And I'm going to put equal signs, oops, so we can see that. So what are we looking for? Should be looking for what that will end up being. And then, next step, don't want too many spaces. There we go. Continuing onward, now numbers with numbers, letters with letters, right? And so we do negative 6 times the 3. Those are the two numbers we see there. So that's negative 18. Positive times negatives can get you a negative still. And then you also had an x and an x. So don't forget to do x squared. Oops. Still getting used to this computer stuff, right? Not as easy as writing on a whiteboard. All right, so then next part, negative 6 times negative 8. Well, it's a negative times a negative, so you get positive. It's going to be 48x, right? There's no second x here, so it just stays by itself. All right, so that's all that this review is really talking about. And that's all that we're going to really look at today. Looking into the next part, this kind of is like a, how would you say? I gotta get over there first. Aha, there we are. This is a little more difficult because you have to distribute twice, you could say, right? We might know another way of doing this that's faster, but I'm just trying to be very thorough here with the review. So what you'd normally do is you take the whole expression here, and you'd multiply it to each part inside, right? And so what that would look like is you'd have the positive, sorry, because this is multiplying when the two parentheses are next to each other like that. So you could do that 5x squared times, you can just leave that first expression the same, right? Plus, now you have negative x, right? Just go in order. We took care of the 5x times this whole thing. we're going to do the negative x times that whole thing. X minus 5, don't have to change anything. Plus, this time negative 3 is at the end. 6x minus 5, right? And why I said you have to distribute twice is because now, well, you can still, this is still a parentheses here, so you still have to distribute each of these in now. So sometimes these can take a bit of time, but while time consuming, once you get the hang of it, it goes pretty quick. So now we're going to do that again, right? I'll draw the lines here just to show it. Guy goes to there. And also goes to the second part. Still getting this down. There we go. Does that look nice? Yeah, good enough. Right. Distribute then from there, the second part. So what is 5x squared? Well, before even solving, I'm just going to keep writing it out so I know I'm not making any mistakes, right? That's the thorough way. You should do that until you're comfortable. Don't take any shortcuts too quickly. 6x plus and then the negative 5. Oh, sorry. I'll do the 5x squared. I want to keep it the same format. Don't want to confuse yourself. Now the negative 5, right? So we split this one into two. 6x and negative 5 over here, and then that 5x is multiplying by both of them. And as you can see, this just starts to get a bit tedious, but that's okay. By the time we get to the end, it'll look a lot nicer. So that at least we have that going for us. And doing it step by step like this, really make sure you get those negatives down, right? Because negative x, negative 5, you don't want to mess that up. That's probably where a lot of you guys might start making mistakes. At least in the past, that's kind of where I'd start to see things, especially with so many steps, right? So you want to be very thorough, making sure that you're taking your time, not rushing too quickly, or else it's easy to make a simple mistake. All right, 6x, and then what do I have left? The negative 5, right? Okay, so 1, okay, and then a second time. All right, does everything look good? Yep. Yep. Yep, okay. Nothing wrong with double checking. Then at the end, you'll actually start to solve things. All right. I just mentioned this on the last one, but you probably want that equal sign, right? I like to have space between things just so it looks a little nicer. Doesn't get so cramped. Okay, so now that they're individualized, you could say there's no more plus signs or minus signs between anything. It's simply multiplying. Now you can actually just go ahead and do that. So number times number, 30, and then x squared times x. That becomes x cubed, right? Plus, then number times number. In this case, there's not another x, so it's negative 25, positive times negative, and then x squared stays then. Plus, just keep going. In this case, the negative out front will still multiply by that 6 because it's the same thing as having a negative 1 here, right? So negative 1 times 6 would just be negative 6. And then x times x, x squared. And another way to know that you're doing it right is just to know that this is a negative and this is positive, so there should still be a negative sign, if that makes it easier too. And then just keep going. Negative times negative, so it should be positive, so just 5x there, plus Negative 3 times 6, that's negative 18. And then x, there's no other x, so it stays singular. And then negative times negative, that'll get you the 15, right? And what's the last step? It's always simplifying. You want to combine like terms. That's what we'd call it. These are each a term. We just went over that in the last subchapter of 10.1. So that should be familiar. Let's see, is any other cubes, right? X cubed. Nope. So that just stays 30x to the third plus x squared, so you can combine those. They're both negative, right? So if you're adding two negative numbers, the negative will just get bigger. So just treat the numbers as if you're adding them normally. So 25 plus 6 is 31. Just keep it negative, and then x squared stays, right? Plus, well, x and x, so you can combine them. Positive plus a negative, so this is going to go from negative 18, you're moving back towards 0, right? You're going more positive, so that'll be negative 13. I know a lot of this might seem simple to some of you, but it's good to have that review, even with the negative and the positive there. Just trying to be thorough. Okay, so now you got everything in the right order. It's descending order, right? That's nice, because it goes from 3 to 2 to 1, and then there's no x, right? Just like we were talking about in last time's video. And a good thing to do when you're doing this is perhaps even practice that vocabulary again. So when you have two terms, right? 1, 2, this is a binomial, and then you want to look at the highest power, it's squared. So this would be a, I'll even write it here, quadratic. Whoops, I'm going to start moving the other stuff there. Binomial. Just good to get that review in there a little bit too. And what's this one here? Well, how many terms are there? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a tetra. Nomial. But usually you want the degree first. So it's a cubed, so it's a cubic tetranomial, right? Hopefully that rings a bell. Get a little more practice with it. And then down here, same idea. We can do the same thing we did here, right? Oops. Yes, I did that right. Okay. So this whole expression times the first part. And then the whole expression again times the second part of the second expression. So right below, I'll write it out. You got x is the first one, right? Times this whole thing, so we'll keep that whole thing the same. It's 4. Oh, it's capitalizing my x's. That's funny. There we go. Plus, and then keep that negative sign with it. Negative 3. Then rewrite the whole first part again. Now, I'm doing it this way, right? Where I take this whole expression times this. But you could do the opposite, right? You could just do this first part, 2x times the whole expression, 2x minus 3, and then plus negative 4 times x minus 3, the whole expression, right? So it could be reversed, is my whole point. It doesn't matter, you'll get to the same result, right? And we can talk about that more in the next video too when we go through FOIL. But in any case, we'll move on. Oop. And then one more time, right? Because there's still addition signs and subtraction signs. We don't want that. By the end, or at least with the parentheses, we don't want that. We don't want a number out front of the parentheses. That's the whole point of this. You want it to end up looking like this and this, right? Or even this right here. Right here, you know you have to distribute because there's a number out front of the parentheses. So that'll help you keep track of where you're at and if you're on the right track or not. So, oh, whoops, I'm skipping my steps again. All right, sorry, here we go. So the x out front Now we'll break it down again. 2x plus, now you can keep that negative 4. It would be x times negative 4 like this. If I'm keeping the same format, you gotta want to keep things straight. All right, and then you get the negative 3 out front times 2x plus negative 3 out front times that negative 4 on the inside. Right? Okay. And last step, solve those and then combine like terms. 2x squared plus negative 4x plus negative 6x plus negative times negative is positive, so 12. And then in the middle, you'll see that those are both x, but you have x squared and a number, so those will stay the same. So just combine those two middle ones. 2x squared plus, well, negative, negative. So just treat them like you're adding them normally. Keep it negative. Plus 12. All right. So this is equal to this, this is equal to this, equal to this, and this, right? So what you're doing is distributing to get it into another form, right? This is a form that isn't as easy in some ways to solve, and yet it is easier. And that's something also I think we might talk about later, but you'll certainly cover it in Algebra 2. So think about it as knowing how to work backwards too, because sometimes you'll be given this. This is kind of a future thing. You'll be given something like this and you'll have to work it back to this form. So that's something for the future, but that's kind of just to give you an idea of why this is going to be useful. This is really going to be something you're going to see in high school. So practice it, try and get good at it. And here at the end, I'll even practice the vocab one more time here. Actually, I don't know if that's a good idea. I don't, right? So how many terms? You got 3, so it's a trinomial. And what's the highest power? 2, so quadratic. So quadratic trinomial. All right, tomorrow we'll go over FOIL. So for now, this will be good for the first video. Give it a go. Most homework should be like this. If it's not, just send us an email. And I look forward to next time.